There is a lot of attention on the value of the peso. The hedging program you've put in place
Yes.
so far appears to be successful.
Yes.
It wasn't so long ago that you said a peso at 22 to the dollar was overdone.
Yes.
How would you characterize the current level?
Well, it's much closer to where it's supposed to be, but I still think that it is undervalued. There's still an important unknown there, which is that we don't know how exactly the bilateral relationship between Mexico and the U.S. will shape up. No,
Of course.
but even taking that into account, and given the other fundamentals of the Mexican economy, I think that the peso is still undervalued.
By how much?
Well, you know, it depends on different models. No,
Well, the one that you like, let's say.
I look into several models at the same time. No, but you know,
Just give me a sense. Are we talking about 5%? Are we talking about 10%?
Well, I mean, it's no more than 10%, but it's still undervalued.
And is there anything that you can do with this uncertainty of U.S.-Mexican relations in the backdrop to help get the peso to where you think it ought to be?
Well, it's not we don't have a target on the exchange rate. No, our target is inflation, and therefore we act to precisely guarantee that inflation, considering the lags with which the monetary policy acts, that it will get back to our objective. Our objective is 3% plus minus 1%. We want to be there as soon as we can, and hopefully we will be there probably towards the end of this year under 4%, and towards the end of 2018 at around 3%.
To what degree is the Fed's effort to normalize policy in the United States helping you or hurting you right now?
Well, I mean, I think that they have operated the normalization process flawlessly. They have done a very good job. They have their forward guidance have worked. They have prepared the markets. They have allowed us also to prepare the circumstances. So I think that so far it has worked very well. I mean, they have done their work very, very well.
Would you consider expanding the hedging program you put in place for the peso?
Well, I mean, we announced a ceiling of $20 billion. So far we have done $1 billion. So we still have a lot of way to go.
And Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Secretary, has suggested that some kind of peso stabilization mechanism ought to be discussed as part of the NAFTA renegotiation. What's your position on that?
Well, I mean, we are more than willing to discuss it with him and with the U.S. counterparts. At the same time, I think that a very important point that I have to make is that we are not a country that explicitly has been trying to depreciate its currency. On the contrary, what you have been seeing recently in our actions is precisely efforts to bring back the peso where its value should be. So we are not in the business of depreciating artificially the peso.
But in principle, do you think some kind of the currency and the value of the currency and the mechanisms around which the value is set ought to be part of a free trade negotiation?
Well, you know, I mean, there is no written rules about that. I mean, for example, if you think, and it's not this what I'm suggesting, but you know, if you see in a span of 50, 60 years, what has happened in the European Union, the Union was first triggered by trade agreements, and then it converged into a currency agreement. No, so it's not that that's the way we have to follow, but you know, so each case has to be analyzed by itself.
And one last question for you. Now that Wilbur Ross is the Commerce Secretary, now that Steve Mnuchin is the Treasury Secretary, do you feel more encouraged by what you're hearing from the Trump administration or less than you were when we last spoke before he took office?
No, I feel more comfortable.